Aluldran Kor had always known that diplomatic missions were dangerous, but he expected danger from politics, not from the polished floors beneath his boots reflecting every regret he'd ever carried. The halls of the Etherian palace stretched endlessly, crystalline walls humming with light that shimmered with every step, reacting as if alive. His travel cloak caught repeatedly on magnetic air filters, which hissed in gentle disapproval, and Aluldran realized dignity was impossible when the building itself seemed to judge him. The Grand Hall of Ether rose ahead, colossal enough that ceremonial sky swans drifted lazily above, their only purpose to impress. The throne floated in the center, a shard of starlight, and upon it sat Queen Lara, blue-skinned, golden-haired, long-eared, and terrifyingly calm. Around her, advisors stood like statues, not blinking since sunrise. Aluldran rehearsed his introduction, trying to ignore the hall's oppressive majesty. The previous delegates had delivered reports, petitions, and one extremely long monologue about trade tariffs that made Aluldran's mind wander into a small, quiet coma. When it was his turn, he hoped only to avoid embarrassment. Stepping forward, he bowed and said, "Aluldran Kor, representing the Outer Rim Relief Coalition." For a moment, nothing happened. The Queen's expression did not change. Advisors shuffled pads. Guards held ceremonial spears like rigid, polished threats. Aluldran congratulated himself on a smooth delivery, until the room froze. Time itself seemed to hesitate. Then, in a voice that echoed like cosmic authority, Lara said, "Wait." Every advisor snapped upright. Guards tightened their grips. The Queen descended from her throne with urgency that made the lights flicker, steps cutting through centuries of protocol. Whispers circulated. She hadn't moved from that throne in 12 years, not even for fainting senators. Lara stopped just short of Aluldran, her wide eyes softening. "Is that really you?" Aluldran blinked. Memories surfaced, a small girl, clutching his sleeve during the evacuation of a war-torn colony, insisting she was brave while trembling inside. Lisa. The child who vanished decades ago. "Lisa," he murmured. Her eyes lit with hope. She reached out to touch his cheek, as if confirming he was real. The court watched, frozen in astonishment. Aluldran, nervous, tried to lighten the moment. "Well, this isn't the usual reaction at diplomatic meetings." Her hand rested gently on his face, and for a moment, the Queen disappeared, leaving only the girl she once was. Relief, disbelief, joy, all collided in that touch. He hugged her back, feeling 20 years of distance collapse into a heartbeat. "I thought I lost you," he whispered. "I never forgot you," she said, her voice trembling. "Not for a single orbit." The past and present collided. Whatever his mission had been, it had transformed instantly. He was no longer a mere delegate. He was part of something profoundly personal and infinitely larger. The next moments passed in silent corridors, lined with floating star maps that shimmered with her heartbeat. No guard stopped them. No advisor interrupted. It felt as if the palace itself had given them space to exist outside protocol, to exist in the moment. "You must stay here," she said. "It's safer. And I need time to explain your significance." "To who?" Aluldran asked, curiosity mingling with caution. "To everyone," she said. "You're part of my history. History is watching." He exhaled slowly. What began as a routine diplomatic visit had become a journey into memory and revelation. She held his hands, and he realized he was no visitor. He was home, tethered to something larger than himself. "You taught me to survive," she said softly. "You gave me hope in a place where hope was rationed thinner than food." Aluldran felt the weight of her words. He could think of nothing to say except, "You were brave. Braver than I ever was." She shook her head. "Only because you made me believe I could be." Silence fell, warm and tender. The two of them, standing amid a galaxy of advisors, lights, and floating star maps, felt time settle around them. That morning, Aluldran awoke to delicate chimes and a rotating ceiling simulating sunrise. He slipped from the soft palace bed, cursing the polite AI, and found Thalen, the guard assigned to him, waiting. "Are you dangerous?" Thalen whispered. "Only before coffee," Aluldran replied. "Ah," said Thalen. That explained nothing. The two reached a terrace overlooking the city of Ether. Towers spiraled like crystalline trees. Ships drifted through the sky like metallic birds. Lyra stood there, ears angled in thought. When she turned, the queenly mask softened completely. "I needed to see you before the ceremony," she said. Aluldran remembered the Grand Convergence ceremony, watched across 2/3 of the star system. Right. The big public moment. "They need to know who you are, not just what you did," she said. "The truth binds nations better than treaties." He tried to smile. "I'm just a relief worker who overuses bandages and accidentally taught children to swear in 3 dialects." She laughed softly. "You taught me to speak. To survive. To hope." Her hands gripped his. "Your presence changes the way my people remember their past. It changes how I see the future." Something within him shifted. Here, in her presence, the weight of decades of duty and loss melted away. He no longer felt like an outsider. He felt rooted, seen. "I'm not the same man I was," he said. "Maybe that's the point," she replied. "We aren't meant to stay who we were." The ceremony began in the Grand Convergence Hall. The ceiling mirrored the live sky, stars spinning in real time. Nobles, diplomats, soldiers, and citizens from across the system watched. Lara addressed them with both regal authority and warmth. She spoke of war, healing, and of a human medic whose kindness had shaped her life. Then, taking Aluldran's hand in hers, she acknowledged the man who mattered most. Not a spy, not a cosmic omen, just a human. The hall responded not with suspicion, but with acceptance. For the first time, Aluldran felt he was part of the story, part of the healing of an entire world. Afterwards, on the palace terrace, evening settled across the sky. Ships drifted like silver fireflies. Aluldran nudged her gently. "People will glare at me even harder now," he said. "No," she replied, eyes bright. "Now they see you." "And what do you see?" "A man who gave me hope," she said. "And a man who returned when I least expected it." "I'm not going anywhere this time," he said. "Good," she whispered. "I've had enough of losing you for one lifetime." The stars appeared overhead, brilliant and infinite. The journey that had brought him here, through chaos, memory, and loss, had found a quiet resolution. Aluldran had discovered something beyond duty or mission. Connection, belonging, and a queen who remembered him, who had waited decades to find him again. The past had found them both, but the future, unpredictable and alive with cosmic noise, was theirs to shape together. The morning after the Grand Convergence ceremony, Aluldran woke to the hum of the palace as if the walls themselves whispered secrets. The sky outside was a pale turquoise, the towers of Ether catching the first rays of the system's distant sun, glinting like shards of ice. Lisa, was already awake, pacing the terrace with hands clasped behind her back, eyes scanning the horizon as if the entire galaxy hung on her judgment. Aluldran stepped outside, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You don't sleep much, do you?" he asked. "Sleep," she said, not turning. "When history waits for you, sleep is a luxury." He frowned. "History or politics?" She finally looked at him, the softness of yesterday giving way to the steel he remembered in her eyes. "Sometimes, Aluldran, the two are inseparable." He followed her gaze to the horizon. Starships moved with precision, part of the Etherian patrol fleet. But one craft lingered just beyond the orbiting beacon, a dark silhouette against the morning light. Aluldran squinted. "Is that?" "Yes," Lisa said, a shadow passing over her face. "It's the Shadari vessel. They've been quiet for decades. Too quiet." The Shadari were a formidable species, renowned for their intelligence, but also for ruthless efficiency. Their silence was never benign. Aluldran's stomach tightened. "I take it quiet doesn't mean friendly." "No," she said, grim. "They've been watching us. Waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And I fear that moment is now." Inside the palace, advisors scrambled, data pads flickering with urgent alerts. Lisa guided Aluldran through the corridors, their hands occasionally brushing. The contact was not romantic, it was survival. Each step felt heavy with responsibility. We need to prepare, she said. And you, she paused, her long ears twitching. You'll help. If history shaped me, it shaped you too. Humanity has a habit of surprising the galaxy. Alaldrin swallowed. I didn't sign up to fight aliens. I signed up for relief work. Relief work, she said, a faint smile flickering, sometimes becomes war by accident. They reached the tactical observatory, a dome of glass and floating holograms. Star systems rotated slowly above them, planets and moons projected in delicate streams of light. Alaldrin stepped closer to a holographic display of Ether's sector. The Shadari, Lisa began, pointing to a cluster of ships orbiting a neighboring system, have advanced cloaking technology. Even our best sensors struggle to detect them. They will likely attempt to bypass defenses and strike key colonies before we even know they're here. Alaldrin's mind raced. And the fleet? Mobilized, she said. But they will be outnumbered if the Shadari hit hard and fast. That's why you're essential. Your knowledge of frontier systems, the colonies you helped stabilize, they trust you. And trust matters more than firepower sometimes. He nodded slowly. So, diplomacy first. Maybe we can talk them down. Lisa's expression hardened. With the Shadari, talking is a form of surrender. But if there's a way to make them see value in humanity, in compassion, maybe it could work. That's why I need you. Hours later, Alaldrin found himself in a briefing chamber with the top commanders of Ether. Holographic star maps floated between them, streaks of projected light marking Shadari patrols and suspected infiltration points. A senior officer, Commander Thalric, leaned forward. You're placing a lot of faith in a single human, he said sharply. This is a military matter, not a humanitarian mission. Alaldrin met his gaze evenly. I may not have a fleet, Commander, but I have something you lack, human unpredictability. Sometimes, the galaxy doesn't respond to power. It responds to choices, to empathy, to courage. Thalric's jaw tightened. He wanted to scoff, but something in Alaldrin's calm, steady tone stopped him. Lisa placed a hand lightly on Alaldrin's shoulder. He saved me once, against impossible odds. I trust him to help us again. The commanders exchanged glances. Some skeptical, some curious, all aware that history had already proven him capable. That evening, Alaldrin and Lisa walked along the terrace overlooking Ether's main harbor. Starships were preparing for possible evacuation missions. The city below glittered with life, unaware of the looming threat. Do you think they'll come for us first? Alaldrin asked quietly. Lisa's gaze followed a slow-moving patrol cruiser. They'll test us. Maybe one colony. Maybe the capital. But they underestimate something humanity has shown across centuries. The ability to adapt, to survive, to unite when the odds seem impossible. Alaldrin let her words sink in. And if we fail? Then we learn, she said simply. And we fight again. The galaxy may be vast, but humans, we endure. A sudden chime interrupted their moment. Lisa touched the side of her head. Report. Her assistant's voice was urgent but calm. Your Majesty, a Shadari scout vessel has been detected near the Vale of Soria. It's small, fast, cloaked, but someone on the frontier colony spotted it. Lisa's eyes narrowed. Prepare the communications. Alaldrin, you'll lead the negotiation team if they attempt contact. And no one underestimates them, ever. 2 hours later, Alaldrin stood aboard the Etherian envoy ship, a sleek craft built for both diplomacy and defense. Lisa watched from the command deck, eyes sharp, commanding, yet tinged with the warmth only he had seen before. The Shadari vessel emerged from the nebula, angular, dark, almost like a jagged shadow against the starlight. Alaldrin adjusted his comms. His hands felt steady, even as adrenaline surged. This is Alaldrin Corps, representing the Outer Rim Relief Coalition and the Etherian Protectorate, he began. We come with peace, and a desire for dialogue. A pause. Then, a voice, metallic and cold. Your efforts are irrelevant, human. The Shadari do not negotiate with anomalies. I'm not an anomaly, Alaldrin replied firmly. I'm a human. And we have survived worse than your fleet could imagine. There was silence, then a low hum, as if the Shadari ship was considering him. Curious, the voice said. Your species values compassion over efficiency. Inefficient, yet persistent. Why? Aluldran's pulse quickened. Because compassion binds civilizations. It allows us to survive catastrophes that technology alone cannot overcome. You may have strength, but we have something that outlasts fleets, choices, and hope. Another pause. This will be tested. The first encounter ended without violence, but the warning was clear. The Shadari were probing, testing, and Aluldran realized that diplomacy alone might not be enough. He and Lisa began coordinating evacuation drills, defense protocols, and intelligence sharing. Through long hours and tense meetings, Aluldran witnessed the breadth of Lisa's leadership. She was not just a queen in title, she was a strategist, a tactician, and, above all, a leader shaped by survival. Every plan she made carried the weight of human lives and the hope of entire colonies. Late one night, after a grueling strategy session, Lisa found Aluldran alone in the observatory, staring at the rotating constellations. "You're tired," she said softly. "I'm fine," he replied, though the exhaustion ran deeper than sleep could fix. She stepped beside him, her hand brushing his. "You've been carrying the galaxy on your shoulders since you arrived." "Not just me," he said. "You too. You've survived more than most rulers ever will. And yet, you never give up. You teach hope by example." She smiled faintly, almost vulnerable. "And you reminded me how to live it. Sometimes, the smallest acts have the largest consequences." Aluldran looked at her. "Then let's make sure the next act is a good one." Weeks passed. Minor skirmishes tested the defenses of Aether's outer colonies. Aluldran led small negotiation teams, his calm voice and human unpredictability buying time while the fleet prepared. The Shadari, intrigued by his resilience, hesitated at key points. During one tense confrontation, Aluldran stood before a Shadari envoy alone, with only his words as defense. Their fleet had surrounded a settlement of refugees, families who had once been under his care. "You humans survive against all odds," the Shadari said. "Why?" "Because we must," Aluldran replied. "Because every life matters. And because surrendering our principles is the only true defeat." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the Shadari withdrew, small, cautious, but withdrawn nonetheless. By the end of the first orbital cycle, Aluldran had become more than a visitor. He was a strategist, a diplomat, a human emblem of resilience. Lisa's empire had embraced him, not because he was royalty, not because of power, but because he reminded everyone what it meant to fight for life, for hope, and for connection. On a quiet night aboard the palace terrace, Aluldran and Lisa stood watching the stars, the Shadari ships lingering as shadows in the distance. "You know," Aluldran said, "I never imagined diplomacy could feel like battle." "Everything feels like battle," she replied softly. "But it's also where we prove who we are. And sometimes, it's where humans show their true strength." Aluldran looked at her, her long ears catching the starlight, her eyes reflecting constellations of both memory and future promise. "Then let's make sure we survive it, together." Lisa's smile was quiet, yet it carried all the weight of hope, leadership, and trust. "Together," she said. And for the first time in decades, Aluldran felt certain. Humanity, unpredictable and stubborn, had not only survived, it had shaped the fate of a star system. And somewhere in the darkness of space, enemies would have to reckon with that. The galaxy was vast, the threats enormous, but humanity had arrived, not as pawns, not as victims, but as catalysts of survival and change. And at the heart of it all, a human medic stood beside a queen, ready to prove that courage, compassion, and choice could echo farther than any fleet, any technology, any weapon ever could.